Hi, welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. Another exciting show, another exciting guest. Today, we're going to go to Ohio, where I used to live, where I used to work as a school teacher, where I used to compete as a bodybuilder. But we're going back there for something else. We're going to go back and talk with a young lady who has taken trauma and rebranded it into two categories: the arts, and the second is writing. But just not just any writing. This is funny. How about almost 7 books in a short span? I haven't written 7 books in such a short span. I only wrote one. This young lady has 7 and more to her resume, but she's also teaching dance and choreography. So, but a beautiful story to say the least. Let's welcome all the way from Ohio, Miss Ashley Rose Marcum. How you doing, Ashley?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
The resume is thick here, super thick. So before we get into these books, your dancing, tell the viewers a little bit about who you are.
Yes. So my name is Ashley Rose Marcum, and I write under the pen name A Shy Rose. I'm a pretty ambitious person. Crazy artistic director is kind of how I sum it up in like a couple words. But I grew up wanting to be a ballerina, although I didn't start dance till I was 12, so I had a late start like Misty Copeland. And I found it was just a true passion. And it was kind of a way for me to express myself and to kind of be real with my feelings that were otherwise kind of ignored or kind of snuffed down as a child. And so I developed my expression through dance through my teenage years. And I was pretty good at it. So I was on the track of becoming a professional ballerina. That was my heart and my ambition. And at 19, actually 18, my life kind of took a shift. I ended up just kind of wanting to pursue that ballerina career. But as a woman of faith, I was like, God, is this the path He wants me to take? And I felt like He was nudging my heart and just was like, well, what if there was a different path? And so I kind of freaked out. But anyways, I surrendered that, and in the course of the next couple years, I ended up getting married pretty young, and I had my first child when I was 19. And then the next 9 years, I was able to take over a studio that was literally kind of plopped in my lap. And so I started teaching to the Oxford community here, and that was like just a huge door and a huge blessing. And I, at this point have taught thousands of dancers and have been able to, put on at least 50 productions, full length productions, and choreograph, 600 to 1,000 dances. And it's been a beautiful way that I feel like I've been able to meld with the community and really make an impact with the community and just help individuals grow in their strength and their ability and find confidence and courage, not just in the dance world, but, inside their lives and what they wanted to do outside of the dance world as well. And on top of that, I raised 6 children. I have one son that I adopted from Ethiopia. All other 5 are biological, 3 girls, 3 boys. And they are my pride and joy. I just absolutely love my children. Most of them, I have 3 that are adults, and then I have 3 in the teenage stage. So kind of winding down that season of my life. So I started writing books, and just to further my impact and be able to encourage and motivate people, help them find a stronger voice for themselves and their abilities. And yeah, and then I'm also stepping into the speaking world. So
Let's go back a little bit.
okay.
You mentioned escape dancing. My daughter was a dancer. She did lyrical, hip hop, all that stuff ever since she was little. I know the pressures that can be upon someone that's getting into that career. But you mentioned a key word. You mentioned escape.
Mm-hmm.
That was your way of escaping, but what were you escaping at that particular age as a child?
Um, so just some events in my life that weren't great for a child to have to experience. But the kind of the root of that is I had a lot of emotions that were suppressed, and I felt like I had to put on the happy face, and I had to act like everything was great and perfect, and kind of just wade through life with that, which was a lot of pressure for a young kid to not feel like they could truly express themselves. So I also play piano. So that was kind of my first initiation into finding an expression where I could find just kind of a peace and let loose a little bit. But really in the dance world, when I dived into the dance world at age 12, it was something that I began to experience that I had no idea that I desperately needed. And I had all of this expression within me. And I just found the dance floor a beautiful way to be able to let that out.
Why wasn't you able to express in your household before you was 12 years old? Like what was the events that, because you said you're driven by your connection with your spirituality
Mhm.
at a young age. So what was crippling you that you had to keep emotions tied until
Um,
12 years old?
so kind of a paralyzing fear. There was some trauma that happened as a young child that you don't know how to process. So you just kind of get stuck in that. Just
Was it verbal, mental,
uh,
physical?
yeah, kind of all of it. And to be able to survive as a child, when you don't know how to process that is one thing. Um, and to find an outlet that's safe to be able to process that is, something that took several years, to get to the point of where I felt like dance was a good expression that I could just feel a new freedom that I hadn't felt yet.
To take the viewers and give them more clarification, is because you're now speaking not only through books, but you're getting ready to be a speaker. So I'm trying to get the viewers a little bit more understanding of the trauma that you went through, because at such a young age to basically go pretty much silent until you're 12 years old. What kind of trauma were you dealing with? Both verbal, you said physical, verbal, and who was the perpetrators? And what were they doing to you?
So I want to be careful with what I say here, just because I, in this journey of processing trauma and kind of moving through it, I feel like, I've been called to forgive and to kind of not hold bitterness and anger on my perpetrators and what happened in my childhood.
Hmm.
And so I have a little bit of a hard time clarifying all the details just because I don't want to do it if it's not helpful. I want to be able to pay the path of how, we can experience things in our life that are pretty traumatic, any angle of the abuse levels that people can endure. And we can we can either sit in it and mull over it and we can be labeled by it, or we can choose a path where we say, this happened to me. It was unfortunate and it definitely left some marks, but it's not my label. It's not who I am. And so when I kind of was able to work through that and just, say, this is not who I am. And as I was transitioning as a teen into an adult, find out, well, who am I? That's kind of where I found, peace and hope and joy. Yes, through my faith was helpful, but I found, the dance world. I found out that I was a dancer. I was a musician. I loved playing piano. I found out that I was, a mother, a young mother, and I absolutely loved that. I had to take on a lot of responsibility as a young adult, but I don't regret it. I think it really shaped and molded me and helped me to see how much a person can take their life and really pour into other people. And it just becomes like this beautiful garden where there is so much blooming. And you can look around, and of course, you can see the weeds and you can pull out the weeds. But to focus on the fragrance of just all that is growing and be a part of that and to partake in, like my children call them the flowers, the most beautiful flowers in my garden, um, to be a part of something more. So, yes, I have a traumatic part of my past, but I like to focus on well, what can I do past that? What can I move through and what can I become? And I think it was kind of what fueled me to be an extremely ambitious person and pursue all these other things in my life. And I felt the strength and the grace from God and my Savior just pulling me through that and saying, okay, you survived that. Now you can take that and you can take
Can
all
you
of that.
share with it what you survived? Because I'm kind of like trying to narrow down myself so I can get a clarity on the actual event that took place. Let me go back because I don't want to I don't want to make you upset. So let me see. Can I trying to get clarity on this? The events that took place and when you was a kid, I take it that they took place in your house and there had to be some members of the household, assuming. Okay. So let's just say some unspeakable things happened to you in your house. The perpetrators, they lived in your house.
Yes,
Okay. So what was the relationship with your mom and your dad? Did they know of these things that was going on in your house?
yes, and no.
Okay. Let me see how I can put this where it makes sense. Yes and no. Why do we say yes and no?
Yes,
Without
and no.
without making you uncomfortable, is what I'm saying.
I had one parent that was aware of it later, long after it happened, and I had one parent that did not.
Okay. Were you were you rescued from that environment and then that's when dancing and piano was introduced to you?
Yeah, it's a very complex web. So I don't know. I can't like it would take forever. I am right. I have a book that kind of delves into this part of my story, but it's in the refinement process. So you'll have to stay tuned for that.
Okay, let's talk about your books. Let's talk about the first book. What's the name of the book and why was it written?
Okay, encouragement for the dyslexic. And I wrote it because my youngest son is very dyslexic. And he's the one that inspired it through a particular event. We were driving to his therapy appointments, and it was raining. It was a very, very wet day, and he was watching the raindrops kind of fall down the window. And he told me, he's like, Mom, wouldn't it be just awesome if we could if each raindrop was a different world and we just jumped from one raindrop to the other raindrop and experienced these different worlds? And it was just a beautiful picture of how different a neurodivergent mind can be and how his brain kind of processed his surroundings and what he was experiencing. I was like, that's brilliant. Sorry, my youngest son's name is Zeb. And I was like, you know what? That's so beautiful that you had that imagination and that you can travel from one world to the other by just looking at raindrops. So I kind of took that and the experience of what he was feeling in life
Yeah.
and um struggling through in life. He was definitely feeling the pressures at his age from being separated from his friends as far as I can't read, which ends up hitting you a lot in life as you get older. And so I wanted to take that experience with my son, that beautiful picture that he gave me, and I wanted to write a book that just reached out to dyslexic people and other people in the neurodiverse spectrum and say, you know what? You are unique. You are beautiful the way that your brain thinks. It might not be like everybody else's, but it's essential. And just give them the kind of empowerment and encouragement that they needed to see their difference, not as a disability, but as an ability that could just really take this world to next levels. So that's kind of what inspired that.
How much of your pain is in this first book?
No, not much, no.
Okay. The second book, Finding the Dancer. This is a series
Yes.
within. Explain that book and how that book came about.
Okay, so Finding the Dancer Within is a 3-book series, and each book addresses different age groups. So the first book, kind of the youngest age book, it has some coloring in it. It's 3 to 5 year olds. The next book is like 8 to your teenage years. And then the other one is like, your late teen to adult age. And many times when I've taught dance, I've had these little opportunities to step in and really find these little moments that I can teach my dancers kind of a core value or a core lesson that they can kind of take from their dance class and incorporate in their lives. But as a dance teacher, I can't spend the whole time talking. And so I really wanted to be able to write a book that could step alongside dancers and what they're experiencing in class and out of class and get the most out of it. So it's kind of like a dancer handbook where they can read it, they can reflect, they can maybe have some questions answered. Some dancers might think, is this normal that I'm thinking this in dance class or feeling this or frustrated? And I kind of just address how to find the focus that they need to get the most out of dance class.
Let's go with the next book. The Poems of Ash Covered Roses.
Yeah.
Interesting topic.
Yeah.
Interesting cover. What's tell me about that?
So that was a collection of poems that I had written over the past 20 years. And there's a lot of pain in that. It's a lot of raw grit. Um, kind of,
Give me an example of what you consider raw grit. Because I think you deal with your trauma a little bit differently. I think you deal with it through dance and through writing. So definitely we're going to have to get these books. So explain what your definition of true grit is in this, and why did you wait so long to really focus on your pain with this book versus making that the top priority.
um, well, in a way, like I said, the compilation of the poems happened over a course of, a decade or two. So they were poems that I had written, and in moments where I was maybe not able to express openly, in my daily activity or friendships or relationships, kind of just pouring out like the sadness of parts of my soul in writing. And I will tell you this though, that most of the poems take you through kind of this channel of grief and sorrow and despair, but there's always light at the end of each poem. Almost every single poem has this underlining, well, what has pulled you up? What has pulled you when you were down? What has helped you overcome and face the next day? So a lot of those poems kind of take people through the emotions, and I wanted to share them because I know I'm not the only one with traumatic things that have happened in my life. I know that there are many people out there that struggle with these feelings and don't know how to process them or don't feel like they have a space or a relationship that they can process them with necessarily. And so I wanted to offer those poems for people just be like, we're all humans. We all go through these emotions. We go through these different situations and scenarios. And, you know, I see you in that, just like one of I think my biggest life callings is to be a person that is like, I see you in that. So, like with my dyslexic son, I have a big heart for neurodiverse people to be like, I see you in that. For my dancers who are going through life and experiencing the different seasons of life, I love to say, I see you in that. With poems, it's kind of the very sad, hard, gritty parts of life. I see you in that. And just say, my story has enabled me to step alongside you in some of these situations.
Wow. Let's go with your next book. Define Fit at 15, Compassion and Courage. I take it that's the final chapter of where you at now.
Yeah, so those are two separate journals. The Finding Fit in 15, I've worked with all different age groups. I've worked from 2.5 to 70-year-olds. And I definitely am very in tune with I think my physical body, also internally. And I like being able to show people, this health matters, right? Finding a form of fitness and prioritizing something in your life that gets you moving, it helps all areas of your life, but it definitely gives people a boost of self-confidence when they actually do take the time to invest in some healthy activity and fitness of sorts. So Finding Fit was kind of a book. I'm also a certified Pilates instructor. So that was a way for me to step into people who might want to find some fitness, but not necessarily through dance. So I added this layer of Pilates, and then I wrote this book to also help people, if you're the average Joe working whatever job, um, finding fit in 15 is saying, you know what, you have 15 minutes, I'm pretty sure, every single day to prioritize this. And I don't think people realize how much that not addressing your physical health really hinders all of your life.
Hmm.
And it's just a journal that gives you opportunity to say, okay, there are three structures, everybody needs to work on a little bit of stretching, everybody needs to work on a little bit of strengthening, and everybody needs to work on a little bit of cardio. And 15 minutes is a great starting point. Of course, you can do more. I encourage you to do more. But if you can devote 15 minutes a day to doing, 5 minutes of each of those, you will experience like a huge benefit inside and
What has been the most toughest part for you so far through your journey?
through my journey. Um, so I guess, being a young mom starting at age 19, I realized I've felt a lot of isolation and a lot of being alone. I lost a lot of friends when I dove into the mother world at a young age because, they were off just starting their young adult lives, and most young adult lives don't include being a mother right away and being full of that responsibility. So a lot of friends, kind of left me because they were off joining colleges or partying or doing whatever, most young people do, where I was living the hardcore responsible life, raising my kids. And then I've kind of experienced different angles of that in different areas of my life where I feel like because of my focus on my path and my endurance to just keep going forward, I kind of feel like I've been called to run a hard race. And because I run a hard race, I don't mean to push people outside. Like I like companionship, but I often find that my pursuit is of a different energy level than most people can keep up with. So I've felt pretty alone and isolated. Another thing to state, because it has made a big impact on, it's something that I've had to process, is that I started a few college classes, but I never completed college. Professional ballerinas don't always go through college because you are training so hardcore with your body pretty much all day long that you don't have time for classes of college structure. So that's not quite the case as much maybe nowadays, but 20 years ago, if you're becoming a professional ballerina, then you're in the studio all the time dancing and physically training, kind of like an athlete or an Olympian, like you're all in. And so I never finished college, and then I lived most of my life growing up in this college town where a lot of our friends, our church, just so many professors and just well-knowledge people. And I felt a little bit like I wasn't quite adding up, that I wasn't quite enough, that I wasn't um, qualified. And that's something that at moments I don't want to say ashamed of, but it kind of made me sad because there was so many conversations that would be happening in the room where, with professors galore sitting there. I was like, well, this isn't me. I don't really have the expertise to do. So I would just kind of sit in the corner. I'm also an introvert, surprise. And so I just wasn't putting myself out there into this kind of conversations very much. But as 20 years of going through this process of being in rooms where I feel like I didn't quite qualify around all these highly educated people, I realized, you know what? There are many different paths. And I was able to grow a business and keep it alive for 20 years through God's grace. And He blessed it. But, I didn't go through all the steps of being trained. I taught myself, and I'm very ambitious in that way. I love to learn, but I'm very hands-on. I'm very hardcore about just diving in and figuring out what I need to do to make something happen. Um, so in that way, I was able to, you know, grow and raise my own studio and be successful in it. And so I also like, it's not that I don't like college. I love college. I have two daughters that are graduating early with masters and bachelors at the age of 21 and 20. And they've gone through, and done amazing things with their college degrees. But on the opposite side, I know there's people out there, probably like me, that excel without needing all of those college degrees and diplomas and signature papers. And so,
Do
again,
you think that I didn't mean to cut you off, but I'm trying to make sure I stay focused on your story too.
uh,
I know all about the school, Miami of Ohio. Like I said, I competed at that school when they was rebuilding the school. I remember
mhm.
when it was a little small little college campus. So my question here is, I'm I'm just hypothetically guessing. You never really at that time probably never had an outlet. Who was your safety net? Because I'm thinking coming from that area, you probably either had one or two choices. First of all, you just dealt with trauma that you probably nobody probably knew about. That was a silencer for you. This then being around all these people in this college town, you either going to college or you getting married. One of the two. You choose to get married. Was that because of the fact that you're being an introvert? Is it because to escape the silence of the lamb type, nobody knowing what you went through? And more importantly, did anybody really know what you had went through, or did you just conceal everything with dancing?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think one of, I think I married young probably to escape some of what happened and just try to move on to the next season of my life. Um, I think that is very valid. I don't, again, being a woman of faith, I feel like it's a path that God gave me, and it's hard. One thing that I like to challenge people is, if I may give a quick like little metaphor, is that we all jump in a car, we buckle up, and we start driving, right? And we can drive along and we can see these things on the side, and we can look out the side window at people's experiences, at what people have, of what other people went through. But if we keep turning our face sideways, then how are we going to get where we're going? And it's the same thing with the rear view mirror. If we stare up at the rear view mirror and we're looking constantly at the back, at the past, we can't go forward. So one of my biggest, like this is part of my keynote speech, is that, to really find joy, to find hope, to find drive, to chase after your dreams and, to build your purpose. It's like you can glance occasionally at the side window or the rearview mirror, but the majority of your focus has to be on the beautiful horizon ahead. So it's like, you can do some of this processing, but for me, it's like, I mean, there's definitely times that I look at the rearview mirror. There's definitely times that I look out the side window. But I feel like, the majority of my focus and the majority of my drive and my passion to really put my foot on that gas pedal and full throttle forward, I have to be focused on the beautiful horizon ahead. And it's also how you incorporate, passengers jumping in beside you and
Mhm.
being a safe, you know, carport for them where they can drive along with you, as if you're safely, kind of steering forward.
You poured a lot of your emotions into the um the poems.
Yeah.
What's the three most impactful poems now that you look back after writing this that you said, you know what, this could have really destroyed me had I let it.
Yeah, well, there's a handful in there. um, there's one called Numb, and there's one called Vision of Beauty. Vision of Beauty is probably one of my favorites. And I feel like it really was a vision given to me when I was a teenager. And I was driving along looking at a beautiful sunset. But in in my mind, that sunset was just black and white. So like it had the potential, but it was just kind of bland. And so in this poem, I describe how at first gaze, it was this black and white horizon. At second gaze, I saw a cross standing in the horizon, and there was a cloth drenched in blood. And as it began to bleed, the blood of Jesus Christ for my faith, it was just filling up the horizon and was making this beautiful sunset. So
Wow.
it takes kind of you through that picture. I don't have it memorized by heart, but you can get the book and read it.
Let's talk about the last one, the compassion and courage. That kind of sums up. So you took everything from the poems and then orchestrated it into the final chapter. What was that like for you?
So the Compassionate Courage book.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, that one is kind of it's a journal for this keynote that I want to, get out there and deliver to people so I can encourage a wider spectrum of people. And I think the reason, so at first I was calling it courageous confidence, but I think that there's an element in being courageous that's beautiful and being confident that's beautiful. It's kind of like, go get them. Yeah, like, just boost yourself up and head out into your path or your journey and just do that thing. And I think that's fine and beautiful. I think it's totally a jet for some people. But I decided to insert the word compassion there because, again, trailing back to kind of everything that I've experienced through life, um, there's an element of compassion that I feel like is needed to be a true drive to lasting confidence and lasting courage. And so one of the points in my keynote that I make is that, okay, the 5 key points. You have to first identify your goal. What is your goal? In life, you have to establish your path. What type of path am I going to take to get there? You have to manage your time and habits, right? Because a lot of people think, okay, I'm going to choose my future. But in all reality, your habits choose your future. So if you're not willing to really micromanage and get down to your habits, you're not going to be able to, really achieve your future, your dreams, unless you're willing to analyze and kind of mold through and wrestle with some of those habits. Are they good for you? Are they bad for you? And if they're not profitable to any part of your life, then you have to learn to get rid of them. And then the next step, finding your focus. And this is, I think, kind of the key to everything that I've experienced is compiled into finding your focus really has to do with all the elements that you combat on a daily basis that are truly negative. So, yes, that can be anger, bitterness, jealousy, rage. It can also be things like procrastination or too much perfectionism. Like there's all these kind of list of things that we can do that are really roots in negativity. And if we establish our path or our hopes or our dreams or anything, but we have all these like little negative things that keep derailing us, then it it stops our growth. And also then our car becomes the car that's stopped alongside of the road with all the flat tires and it can't go forward. So I think the thing is okay, finding your focus, like, steps of forgiveness that I mentioned earlier, like that's key. Forgiving isn't forgetting, but if you have the ability in your heart to say, okay, there's part of your heart that is all tangled up when you have a root of unforgiveness towards somebody. And if you really want to go forward, as painful as it is, not that you're not denying yourself by forgiving other people, you are taking up the ability to say, you know what? I am more than this. I'm more than this trauma. I'm more than this tragedy. I'm more than this issue. I'm more than this person and the way that they treated me. And being able to say, I forgive you is giving you the keys of freedom to move forward without that being a weight and a hurdle in your life anymore. So, yeah, finding your focus, I think, has a lot to do with negativity. And scientifically, like if you are constantly negative, it actually shrinks your brain, and it does a lot of crap to all your body, internally. People end up with, all these symptoms that are pretty hindering and set you back. And a lot of that is actually rooted in this negative mindset that people get trapped in. And positivity actually has the ability to heal your brain and give you true strength and freedom to go forward and to really chase after those dreams, to be truly confident and courageous. So yeah, I changed kind of my keynote title from courageous confidence to compassionate confidence, because I think that compassionate element, not just for yourself but other people, I think is core in finding a confidence that is truly rooted to send you on your best way.
The individuals that you mentioned forgiveness, how have they received your forgiveness? Do they know that you've said, you know what, I release you from everything, the trauma that you caused upon me? How are they receiving your let go, your new awakening?
I mean, it's hard for me to speak for them. Um, there's the elements of the trauma that happened in my past. There's been trickling uh, betrayals that have happened throughout my life that were pretty heartbreaking. And I don't know, to say, things like, I'm truly sorry, or I truly, I forgive you, like anything that comes from that deepest part of your heart where you're trying to find peace. I think, again, as a woman of faith, I think it's God's intervention. It's Jesus coming in. It's the Holy Spirit coming in to really do that work in you that really brings the true healing. And I can't really speak for their side of things very well. And all I can do is focus on, I think, the side that I know what's best for me when it comes to those kind of things. And like I said, I've discovered that, being a person of bitterness has never helped anybody, and so, for me, it's like, it's not that I don't feel pain. I feel pain deeply. I'm a very empathetic person, and that's like, I think, what can I do now that I've experienced these things is step into other people's stories and say, okay, I get it. Like, I truly get it. And like, you're not alone. I think that there's so many individuals out there that feel like they're alone. And to be able to have your stories or have your lessons or have your confidence that you're now walking in is a testimony of being like, okay, yeah, I waded through the same storm and I survived, and you can survive too. And here, I want to give you a candle. I want to give you a flashlight. I want to help you through. Like, hold my hand. Let's get past this stuff.
You know what? That's a beautiful story. I'm proud of you for taking time to come on the show and explaining your method on how you maneuver through all of that trauma and pain and coming out smelling like roses. Definitely, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you get the book. How can people follow you and get a hold of these books and read a little bit deeper into your story?
So my books are on Amazon right now. I might soon have other methods to also get a hold of it. If you go to my website, ashyroseauthor.com, I do have my links to my books in there as well. It also gives more of kind of my speaker bio and how, I'm willing and able and wanting to get on stages and just to be able to promote kind of just this message of you're not alone and let's find compassionate courage together. So yeah, ashyroseauthor.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you subscribe, click follow. All it takes is one push of that button to make a difference in somebody's life as well as your own. Ashley, thank you so much once again for taking time out to come on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, like I said, this has been another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Crayton Show.